Doom v Vamos v Vamos Epicureans. This is the BCE Comics Pod one-shot edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
I'm doing well, particularly since we are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and this one-shot is going to be our brief thoughts on today's issue, which is Uncanny X-Men number 179, What Happened to Kitty? Dan Green is now listed as a co-artist with John Romita Jr., and I think this is going to be kind of the team going forward, or at least that's what it looks like. I finally got my physical copy of the book, so I was able to look ahead a little bit easier.
Nice.
Alright, so, as Storm, Rogue, and Wolverine go to the morgue to identify Kitty's body, as we saw at the end of the last issue, she is apparently dead, Wolverine is convinced that, well, that dead body does not belong to Kitty. And it turns out that the Morlocks staged Kitty's death and kidnapped her so that she could marry Caliban and fulfill her promise that she made the last time she was with the Morlocks. Well, Kitty struggles with this, and Storm, Rogue, and Wolverine come to her rescue, but Kitty eventually agrees to stay with the Morlocks so that the Morlock healer can go save Colossus. Well, after this, Caliban is so moved that he releases Kitty from her vows, and so she can return to the X-Men. All right, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I enjoy the... I'm a big fan of the Morlocks, at least the initial kind of rollout from it. A lot of that's nostalgia, but I like this storyline, right? Like I think it pulls things back in. I was reminded of the G Nation version of the Morlocks that come much later. They're like after Onslaught, and where they have Marrow with the bones, and how much that story is a retread of the original version of the Morlock story. If you look at the beats of that, but this seems very different, right? This is basically more Callisto just messing with people because she's pissed off, and you understand why she would be. You get some great character development from Caliban, who, if you've seen the Logan movie, is going to look, somewhat similar but very different. But he's, a big part of that movie. It's a very interesting development for that character, especially when I think about my interaction with this character, which was during like the X-Force days, where he looks much different. He's kind of beefed up. He goes through a transformation at some point. Apocalypse gets a hold of him or something like that. So he's a bit different in later on. I think the art is really strong, and the costume is really interesting. So Dan Green's giving this sort of like a little bit of like a darker, thicker, grittier context to this to Romita's art, and sort of leaning into some of that. You can kind of see the way that they're experimenting with some new characters here with Leech. Leech looks kind of creepy and very alien-like, and he'll become more Kitty-like when they kind of team him up with Artie much later on in like the X Factor time frame. So, but this looks, he almost looks like Yoda or something here or something, and I like how Mask's powers are just so devastating, right? Like it really can mess around with things. I think the X-Men all display like smart uses of their powers, whether that's Rogue helping to heal or helping to unlock, I should say, Colossus and the healer healing him, or Wolverine sniffing out that's not really Kitty there. So I had a lot of fun with this issue. I thought it was pretty good. It lays there's also a little thing here that I'm going to talk more about in one of our future issues, where we're starting to get homework in the X books to read. So there's a bit of like where they reference the Magic miniseries on one of the pages. And we've had a little bit of like touching with New Mutants, but by the end of this volume, I feel like there's a lot more homework, and I think that's just going to continue. And had I read that or had coming from the 90s, that's expected, but coming from the last, almost 100 issues that we've read on this podcast, it's been pretty well self-contained. And we've seen the sort of like the doors start to open, and I feel like they're going to open wide in the next couple of issues, where it's like you got to start to read a whole bunch of other things if you want to be in the know of what's going on there. So,
yeah, there's a part of me that thinks that the holidays are over. I've found that I've been able to keep up with the daily reading pretty easily, and I've started going through some other trade paperbacks and setting up some mini reviews that we're going to do. There's a part of me that wonders if maybe we should start doing one shots for New Mutants, read them along this. But at the same time, I worry about overloading us. Can we keep up with that? So I don't know, but yeah, I've had kind of the same thinking. I enjoyed this one, although I think there's one glaring thing that is missing here that I want an explanation for, and that's how did the Morlocks stage Kitty's murder, right? We were left at the end of the last episode with Kitty seemingly tripping. She's over the air of the Baxter building and seemingly falling. So we know where the Morlocks got the body. That was explained in the previous issue. We know how they could change the way she looks because of mask. But how did they trip Kitty? How did they catch her mid-flight? That's what I want to know, but so far that's not been explained, and I don't know if we'll get an explanation for that in the future.
I wonder if they use. I mean, you're right. I don't think that they explain it, but I wonder if they use Leech to turn her powers off and then just use the healer to heal her.
Okay, that could be an explanation.
I mean, they don't say that. I'm just kind of making that up,
right?
But...
I mean, it does make sense that Leech, because I think in the previous issues, she says something about how her powers aren't working or something, so Leech would be a good explanation for that, but yeah. I think also this issue has an interesting moral quandary that Kitty has to deal with, right? She did lie in order to save her friends in the previous Morlock issues, but is that okay, all right? At what point are we allowed to lie and to manipulate in order to help others, when of course lying and manipulation are actions that are going to hurt others as well? I don't have a good answer for that. That's definitely I guess it goes back to the whole Machiavelli thing, do the ends justify the means? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a very simplistic version of that here, whereas fast forward 30 years of X-Men comics, and I mean, half of them wouldn't think twice about murdering somebody for the end to justify the means, let alone telling a lie like that. So,
yeah. I guess the only other thing I had a question about is, yes, interesting use of Wolverine using his powers to... he's using his powers in order to identify that that's not Kitty in the morgue. However, he then lights up a cigarette in the morgue afterwards. How is he smelling anything above that? Or maybe he lights up a cigarette in order to get rid of the smells of all the dead bodies that only he can really... smell inside there. I don't know.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of him lighting up his cigarettes or cigars over the next 20 or 30 issues, and then eventually when we get to like the 90s, they'll wipe that stuff away to the point where one of the covers of the epics will digitally remove.
Really?
They remove it on the cover, right?
They remove it. I mean, I know I think it was Quesada in the 2000s that finally made the line and said no more cigarette, no more smoking in Marvel Comics, because the Thing used to smoke a cigar all the time too.
Right. So this is the Wounded Wolf cover for issues 199 to 210, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has the cigar digitally removed because the issue is 213, I think, or 210 itself, rather. And this is the original cover. This is the cover to the
right
Mutant Messenger trade. But the cover to the issue, it will be colored slightly different because they do a little bit of recoloring on that. But it had the cigar, obviously. So.
Well, so long as that cigar is still in the actual book, I could understand why they would get rid of it on the cover. We're sensitive about that sort of thing these days. But 80s, early 90s, people were smoking everywhere. So
yeah, and they do leave it on the inside of the book.
Okay. I'm glad that's not been digitally altered. These things they're historical time capsules. Got to be careful when it comes to censorship. Right.
Yep.
Let's see. I do have a no prize for this one. All right.
All right.
The M. Bison Award for Fashion is given to Caliban for his wedding suit. Now, I'll admit, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on this one because his clothes immediately reminded me of M. Bison from Street Fighter 2. That came out in 1991, though, so that couldn't have influenced this. This came out in, 84, I think? Yeah, I think this was 84. So, obviously, Street Fighter 2 didn't influence this. However, M. Bison's design was based on a manga character called General Washizaki, but that manga first came out in 1987, so that too could not have been an influence here. But that character, Washizaki, was based on another character from Japanese literature who was basically wearing a Japanese imperial officer's uniform, which led me to the conclusion of maybe that's all this is. Maybe this is a Japanese imperial officer's uniform. So how Caliban has it in the United States, I don't know. It's a weird choice. We've seen a lot of Japanese influence during the Claremont era anyway, so maybe that's all this is. I don't know, though. Maybe someone who has a better finger on the fashion world could tell me what this actually is, but that was my reasoning.
Yeah, it definitely stands out. I mean, it's definitely something that was surprising when I saw it. It looked familiar.
I mean, the Morlocks are supposed to be weird looking, right? That's the whole idea, and they're all wearing rags and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah, the nice uniform stood out as being odd.
Yeah, it's his dress clothes.
Yeah. All right, Stojer, any other final thoughts?
I'll just add it's his dress clothes for marrying his child bride. I'm still hung up on the whole Kitty's only 14 and we're marrying her off, or I'll probably have at least one more rant coming up in one of the next couple issues, and then I can let it go for a while. So
yeah, I think we might end up having a discussion about that when that comes along. But okay, we'll worry about that for the future. If you guys have enjoyed our thoughts, again, follow us on YouTube. We're going to read, rate, and review a full Big Collected Edition comic once a month. This Sunday is going to be Dark Avengers. We have a poll on our YouTube page for what we're going to read. Not in March, but April. So the April poll is up, so go ahead and vote in there. Right now, Captain America Streets of Poison has a clear lead, so if you want to read Streets of Poison, go vote for it. If you don't, go vote against it. All right. These one-shots are going to come out once a day as well. 3 p.m. is when they typically drop. I think that's it. All right. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll catch you again next time.